Hey there, how's it going? So today I wanted to quickly show us how to use the Azure CLI. I got this request in one of the forms I put out so I can gather the kind of content people like me to make. And this is the first video in the series where I tag code, cloud, and DevOps tutorials where I actually get questions on technical things I could make videos on. And this is the very first one in that series, so I hope I do it justice. And this is for Samuel, and he asked how we could use the Azure CLI. So he's new to learning Azure, he's new to the cloud world. And from the questions he has been asking me on WhatsApp, it's been really exciting for him. But then wanted to know how to actually utilize the Azure CLI. So instead of actually answering him one to one, I decided to make a video so the whole world could benefit from his question. So what I'm going to do today is that I will walk through from the very first step how you can go ahead to install the Azure CLI, log into the Azure CLI, and customize the Azure CLI. So basically, the Azure CLI is a command line interface tool you use for, giving commands to the Azure cloud platform. So most cloud platforms have a sort of CLI you could use for managing resources in the cloud, and Azure CLI is just one of them. And one thing about the Azure CLI is that it's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux operating system. Although I'll be demoing this on the Windows operating system, the same principles apply across all the operating systems. I think the only difference here would be the installation process. So to get started, let's go ahead and actually install the Azure CLI. So let's go ahead and go to my screen session. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go on my browser. I'm using Microsoft Edge right here. And then what I want to do is I want to search for download Azure CLI. So I'm doing this as if I have no clue what I'm doing. And as you can see here, it detected that my operating system is Windows, so it gave me the Windows option. But I could click into that, most likely to bring the one for your operating system, Mac or Linux, whichever one you're using. And then it takes a little bit of time to load up. Now that's taking a little bit too long that I hoped. Okay, fine, good. So you can see when you go to the website, you can see instructions on how to download and install for the Mac operating system. If you're on a Mac, you have to install for Homebrew and then update your packages and then start installing stuff. And that's the process for macOS. Same operating procedure will go on for Linux depending on the distribution of Linux you're using. So you can follow the instructions through on the Microsoft website right here. And if you're on the Windows operating system, pretty much okay to go. You could also use the Microsoft installer. You could use PowerShell with the MSI installer, Windows Package Manager. You could even use package managers like Choco to be able to do this. I normally just use Winget to do my installation. So that is the process to install the Azure CLI. And once you're done, to verify that things are working fine for you, what you want to do is open up your command line interface, and here you could use anything. You could use Windows terminal, you could use command prompt, you could use PowerShell, you could use any terminal you're used to. Now you can see here I'm using something on my computer. You can see here I am using another subscription that I use to trade. So what I need to do now is change that to my operating system. But the very first step I want to walk us through is how to actually log into the Azure CLI. So once you've installed the Azure CLI, if I type in AZ, you can see it will give me some list of things I could do with the Azure CLI, which I think is really super duper fun to use. Let me bring that into full view right here. So you can see I could do a whole lot of things with Azure CLI, with IoT, app services, and all sorts. No, what I want to do now, because I'm logged into the wrong subscription, is first I want to do AZ. Before I do that, let me clear this up. I'm using all my push for my terminal, but you don't have to do that if that's not your thing. That's totally fine, but the process is still the same. So what I want to do right here is go and do AZ login. And what this will do for me is that it will open up my browser instance and try to sign me in to Azure. And as you can see, I've been logged in successfully to Azure, and I can close this window and go back into my terminal. And what would happen right here, don't mind that warning right there, is just a couple of older subscriptions I've been using. For someone like me that I have a whole lot of older subscriptions, you can see that I will get a bunch of them. So what I need to do is find the right subscription and then set that subscription as my default login subscription. So what I want to do to be able to do that, I could do AZ account lists. This will give me that same prompt, just like you saw earlier on, but a bit more cleaner than after I just logged in. So what I want to do is I want to look for my training subscription. This one right here. That's the one I'm looking for. That's the one I want to log into. And the way I'll do this is pretty simple. I can either use the ID of that subscription, or I could use the name of that subscription. Either one of this. So what I want to do, I want to use the ID because the ID is mostly just the best way to go. So I will copy this. And then the next thing I will do, you can see the default subscription you log me into is the Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, which I don't want to use. So what I want to do is do AZ account set -s. You can even see it's giving me that prompt to be able to do this. And I put in the subscription ID I want to use. And boom, you can see it's changed up to my Azure training subscription. If I go to the Azure portal, actually, if I go on to the Azure portal, I'm just going to close this up and close this up and close this up. If I go into the Azure portal, this is that subscription I'm talking about. This one right here. And you can see it's one of the subscriptions I use to be able to demo this kind of facility because I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. Now, that is cool because I'm logged in now. I can start doing stuff with the subscription I'm logged into. In your case, if you want to sign up for Azure afresh, you can go to azure.com/free. That is azure.com/free. And then what that would do is it will give you 30 days trial to use Azure. And then once you're done playing with it, you can decide to be a paying customer or find other ways to get subscription, maybe through the company you work for or through the bootcamp you're going through. So I will close that tab for now, and then we'll start actually using the Azure CLI the way we're supposed to. The best way and easiest way to learn anything is actually start doing and not talking so much about it. So let's get into the deep of things. So I will go ahead now. I'll be using VS Code for this mainly because that is easier for me to manage and see. And I'll just clear my terminal here and then just increase this view just a little bit so it's a bit clearer for us to see. And what I want to do is I just want to confirm that I'm still logged into the right subscription. So I'm using the embedded terminal inside of VS Code, and that's how I'll be using going forward in this tutorial. So you can see I'm still in the training subscription, which is good. All right, so the first thing I want to do now is actually go ahead and create a resource group. So I'll start writing some bit of scripts here, which you can put in your terminal. Feel free to pause this video and type in the commands as I'm doing them. So what I'm using here is PowerShell, but basically you can use Bash, you can use any terminal language you're used to, Python, you name it. But for this, I'm using PowerShell. Of course, you can install PowerShell also on Mac and Linux so that it's kind of the same thing you're doing here. So I just created a script.ps1 file, and inside there is where I'll put everything I want to use. So to not waste so much of our time, I prepared some scripts for us to use. So I'll copy that in here. And what the script basically does is that it sets a variable called resource group name, calling it ccd-rg, putting the location to UK South, and then creating that resource group. As simple as that. That's what it's doing. It's just go ahead and create a resource group in the UK South region. And that's what it's going to go ahead and do. So if I go ahead and select all of this and run those lines, you would see that after a couple of seconds, it went ahead to provision that resource group, and it succeeded, as you can see right here in the terminal. If I now go ahead into my Azure portal, I can go to the subscription and filter into resource groups. I should be able to find that resource group right here. And as specified for the terminal, or for the command line, it's in the UK South region. And that is what we want to do. That is the first step to success. Now, if you've been able to do this so far, it means that you've been able to successfully use the Azure CLI. And what goes on from here is just a bit of practice, 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 and practice, practice, practice. Now, I put UK South in there, but you might be wondering, is it just UK South I can use for managing Azure resources? The answer is no. There are a lot of locations you can use to provision Azure resources. So the next command I will run here, so you can actually get the list of the locations you can use for Azure, is I'll put in another command here. I'll just comment this out so it doesn't block our view. AZ account list locations. Those are the locations. So this command will basically list the locations your account can create resources in, and we can go ahead and output that to a table. Actually, I'll touch on the output just in a little while. Now, if I go ahead and run this line and I expand the terminal just a little bit, you can see here there's a lot of these locations. East US, you can see the short name for them, the display names, and you can pick out anyone you want to use for your purpose of deployment, depending on the location you're in and wherever the requirement says you need to put those resources. So you can go ahead and do all of that. And that is just one nice command you can always use. Now, I know all this because I've been able to use the Azure CLI over the years, but for your own case, you need to understand the basics first. So let's go back into the resource group I created earlier on. Let's reactivate that comment. Now, what I did here, as I mentioned earlier on, is creating a variable in PowerShell, and that is resource group name equals ccd2rg. And I just prefer using lowercase because it's sort of neater and easier to use, and it's sort of a cross-board operating system. And then I set another variable called resource group location. And in this command, AZ group says it's telling the Azure CLI. So AZ, whenever I see the AZ command, it's telling the Azure CLI to create. So it's the command, the resource, the platform, Azure. You're telling it to create a resource group with the name of this variable, ccd2rg, and putting it in UK South location. Now, I could have put in this literally in here, like literally put in the strings here, but down the line, if you're writing a more robust application, it wouldn't be scalable to start typing all this in. So the best and most recommended way is to set those things you want to use as parameters for your CLI as variables before you actually start doing them. And whenever you see yourself at coding stuff over and over again, you will need to think about making them into variables. Let me just clear my terminal here so we can proceed safely. And that is that bit right there. So now the next thing we actually want to touch on now is, so now you might be stuck. You might be asking yourself, what if I don't know what commands to run? That is totally fine also, because there's always help in the Azure CLI. So what you want to do now, don't mind the prompt that just came up. That's my GitHub Copilot, trying to help me out and figuring my next move, but I wouldn't do that right now. So what I want to do next now is to get help. You can always do az help. So if I run that, what that does for me is it brings up a list of things I could do with help with Azure. So it could help me with all this stuff. It could help me with AZ account. So let's say I want to create an Azure web app, for example. I have no clue how to do that. Let's assume I don't have a clue how to do that. I could go ahead now into and find AZ web app. Oh yeah, I could create a web app. Yep, but I don't know what commands to run. That's totally fine also. So what I could do, let me bring this down just a little bit more now. I could do AZ web app --h LP. Now, this same command could be written as az web app -h. This is the shorthand for help. So any of this would actually work. So if I did run this line here, see right here, it gave me things I could create. So I wanted to create a web app, so I could go do az web app create, and then I put in the commands. If I don't know the next step after create, I still put in the help, and off I go on and on and on and like that till I'm done doing what I'm doing. But I have prepared some commands for us to use in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and actually use both ones just in a bit. So shorthands, longhand, you can decide whichever one you want to use for your usage, but it's advisable always to use the longhand because it's much clearer and easier to understand for people who don't know exactly what you're doing. So what I want to do now is I want to customize my CLI. But before I do that, let's actually go ahead and create a web app inside of that resource group. So what I want to do now is we've created a resource group, which is nice, but let's actually get rid of that resource group right now. So I'm going to do az group delete. Yeah, ignore that bit. I want to move this command up just a little bit. Now these are still my variables, so I could go ahead and just run that line. That's fine. And that resource group will be deleted from Azure just like that. Now let's go ahead and actually now create a web application, which is pretty super simple. And I said earlier on, the best way to learn anything is actually start doing stuff. So first thing you want to do is create the resource group over again, but now give it another name. And the reason I'm creating this resource group all over again is simple. I want to create names that apply to the things I want to do. So I want to create web apps inside of a resource group. So I will name it Code Cloud DevOps CCD Web App Tutorial Resource Group, and then put it in use case out still, and then run the command. So once I do that, create the resource group, and that is done. Next thing I want to do now is create the web app inside of that resource group. Now, to create a web app inside of Azure, you need something called an app service plan. An app service plan is a server specification of your web application. So that server specification specifies the kind of CPU, the kind of memory that server would have to be able to run. So what I've done is also, of course, prepare the scripts. I have the resource group name already, so I can actually remove this bit here. And I could reuse the resource group location here instead of specifically putting UK South. All right. So what I want to do now, let me collapse this just a little bit so it's a bit visible. So I've given my app service plan a name, and I want to use the free service plan. You could go to the Azure documentation to find out the list of service plans you can use. You can use free, shared, basic, premium, isolated, and all sorts. You can even use ones for containers, which is perfectly fine. But for the purpose of this demo, I'll use the free plan, which short code is F1. So let's go ahead and set the variables. That is done. The next thing now is to tell the Azure CLI to create an app service plan and give it a name we've set in the variable, put it in the location, put it in the SKU, and put it in our resource group. So let's go ahead and run that. And the app service plan is created. Let's verify that by logging into the Azure portal. So we'll go back here. This resource group is already gone, so we wouldn't worry so much about that. And let's refresh this page. Go into the training subscription. Go to resource groups. you should see CCD Web App Tutorial RG, and inside there, we should find our app service plan just in a bit. The fact that it mentioned that it's done in the Azure CLI doesn't mean that it will show up immediately in the Azure portal. So you have to give it a couple of seconds to minutes for it to actually show up inside of here. You see, I refreshed and then our app service plan is showing up right here. If I click into it, you can see information and details about it. Now, I'm doing everything here in the Azure CLI because it's much easier and cleaner without you having to, click around stuff. You can focus on just creating stuff. And with our app service created now, we can go ahead and create our web application. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we'll do for our web app now is to go ahead and give it a name, of course. And then give our app service plan as a name already, I suppose. So I can skip this bit. Our web app, of course, is unused. That's the one in this thing is giving me. It's assigned, but it's never used. That is fine. We'll move on from there just in a bit. We have our resource group created already. So next thing I want to do here is tell the Azure CLI to create a web application and give it a name that was assigned, and then just go ahead and do stuff. So let's go ahead and run this command right there. We'll run these two lines together here. So it's doing the Azure CLI should create a web app, give it a name, put it in the service plan we just created, because I mentioned earlier on that the app service plan is the server spec of our web app. So we need to attach that app to that service plan. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And in a couple of seconds, it should tell us, all things being equal, that this works fine. Don't ignore the warning of that Python thing. I don't know what's going on there, to be honest. And that's pretty much done. You can see it's running, it's up and running, it's successful. If I go ahead and refresh this just a little bit, that 0/0 of apps and slots should ideally change to 1, because now we have one web application running in that app service plan. Let's go back into the resource group now and just give this a little bit of a refresh. And you can see our web application running in the cloud. We have a URL for it. If I click into that, boom, our web app is up and running. That is pretty nice and smooth. I could do a whole lot more things with this web application, but what I'll advise you do is go ahead and actually go on to the documentation of the web app, follow through the tutorials in there, and then you'll be able to find your way around, because of course I might tell you, yes, I'm gonna create a web app from scratch, write the code to do it right now and deploy it to you, but then that might not be your favorite programming language. So pick your favorite programming language and then try to deploy this web app. That is the assignment I have for you. And then let me know if you're able to do that. Create a simple web app. It could be an HTML app, could be a Python app, could be a Java web app, could be anything. Create that web application and publish it to the web app you have created. That's my homework for you. Yes, you. That's my homework for you. Yeah, I just trying to be funny there. Now that I've created a web application, deployed it, and all that, let's look a little bit at how you can, customize your Azure CLI. So let's look at that just right about now, because of course, sometimes you just want to have a bit of personal feel to your CLI. Now, most of the things I've been doing in the CLI, you can see that it is giving me my output in JSON. Now, I might not like JSON. I might like YAML. That is totally fine. I might want my default output style to be a table or to be just text. I could do all of those things with the Azure CLI. So let's clear this up just a little bit. Okay, let's clear this just a little bit. So I could do this right now. I could say, now to be able to configure my CLI, let's clear this up a little bit. all I need to do is do this. So I do config set core.output to YAML. So whatever thing I do now in the CLI, my output will be in YAML. So if I do easy account show, for example, I get YAML instead of JSON. If I change that to JSON and I do the same command again, you see my output looks a little bit different. Now, to be honest, I would prefer YAML myself. So I'm going to set my default to YAML also. And then, of course, I could do a whole lot more configuration, but then it would not be a good use of our time me showing you every kind of configuration you can do. So what I'll do is in the video comment, I will put in a link to the GitHub repo for this tutorial where you can actually see a list of ones I prepared for you, and of course the assignment I give you will be right in there for you to be able to check out and use for yourself. Let me know if this actually benefited you and if this answered the question to a little bit of an extent, and then if you have further questions, you of course know you can use the link in the video description where I'll put a link for you to fill the form to, or for me to know that you want to make another video more detailed, and I'll of course put more description into the video this time. And I will get to doing it as soon as possible, as soon as I can. And I hope this actually helped you. If you like this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and try to subscribe so you don't miss any further videos like this one. I will try as much as possible to try to make videos like this like almost every week, God helping me and time also permitting me. And that is that on using the Azure CLI. I hope this helped you just a little bit to forward your journey into the world of code, cloud, and DevOps. Until I see you again yet in another video, you know what I say. Stay safe and goodbye.